Hello everyone and welcome to another video here on Sam's Crafty Castle, and I thought to start off the new year, although I mean this is video 2 of the new year, but I wanted to share sort of my basic like card making supply list. Just, you know, if anyone's looking for a new hobby to start in 2024 or something like that, or just like what do I consider the like must-haves to get started and do the basic things. So first up, we have cardstock, because you can't do a whole lot of anything if you don't have cardstock. So I generally, all of mine is 8.5 by 11. You can obviously find larger sizes, but 8.5 by 11 is sort of the standard size here in the US and the one that I use the most. So all of mine is that size for the most part. I do have a couple 12 by 12 sheets, but for the most part, it's all 8.5 by 11. And the two colors you absolutely have to have, I think, are white and black. You can do anything with white and black. If you only ever buy two colors, let them be white and black. You can pretty much make anything work. If I was going to add in a third color, I'd add in craft. It's a great sort of in between white and black, and you can do pretty much anything you would do with either of those colors with craft, but I would not use it as like a starting color. It would be, if I was going to include three colors, it would be, I would add craft into the mix. And then as you explore and get more comfortable and start experimenting with things, from there I would start adding in like your favorite colors. So like in my case, a lot of my go-to colors tend to be like pink and purple. So like I would add a pink and a purple into my collection as I was looking to expand. Maybe a blue if I was really into doing like Christmas cards. Obviously, I'd go more towards like the red and green. But you just have to decide what works best for you, basically. Once you expand from these three colors, obviously then there's other neutrals you can look at, grays, browns, that kind of thing as well. But that's how I would expand from there. Next thing I would add is pattern paper. This is probably could have not really something you need to be like really get started. Like you can do everything you need to do with just the white and black cardstock, like I said earlier. But this can help jazz things up a little bit. They make fun background panels. If you find ones that have bigger images on them, you can cut those out and use those as focal images. They just add a lot. I'd start with maybe like a more basic background, like those checkered platy ones I have there, or like a polka dot stripe kind of situation. If I was going to only add like one pattern paper thing to it. I'd also recommend starting with like maybe a 6x6 pattern paper pack, but you can also go to and get these 12 by 12 ones, which that brings me to my next sort of thing really quick, is that I'm going to have links in the description below to all of my favorite brands, but don't let that stop you. If you just want to go to like Joann's and Michael's and pick up some stuff, go for it. Like these 12 by 12 pattern paper sheets, you can usually just get one sheet, which might be helpful if you're just getting started. You can get a lot out of a 12 by 12 sheet as well. So the next step would be, how do you cut your paper? So there's so many different options for these. This one's my personal favorite, this Fiskars trimmer. I like the slide trimmers the best. There's also, and I mean, I have multiple paper cutters and paper trimmers, but the Fiskars one also tends to be very accessible for people, and easy to find. But you can get like the guillotine style trimmers. There's rotary style trimmers. I'm showing a couple of mine here, the different styles that I have. But there's the guillotine style, which is this one that you're looking at. There's rotary style trimmers. There's all kinds of different trimmers and things. Why am I blanking on the other one? But get some kind of paper trimmer. It's going to be the easiest thing to do. My guillotine trimmers are very small. I recommend getting something that can at least handle essentially a 12 by 12 sheet of paper. Just because most of your cardstock and stuff is either going to be 8.5 by 11 or 12 by 12, and it just helps. I just thought of something else too really quick, so I'm just going to let this video play while I talk about it, even though it's not entirely related, because I won't remember to bring it up later in the video. But card bases and things I talk about in a little while. It's actually like the next section after this. And I just wanted to say too, the other thing you can do is buy pre-made ones of those. So like me talking about like try to find something that will let you cut a 12 by 12 sheet of paper. That really only applies, no, that's not true. But the biggest reason that applies is if you're cutting card bases for things, but you don't have to do that. But I would recommend getting something that can cut up to a 12-inch sheet of paper, whatever trimmer you look at, for your first trimmer. And then after that, if you decide you want to add a smaller one, you obviously can do that too. The other option is obviously scissors. You can cut anything with scissors as well, but, paper trimmers are kind of easier, I think, generally. But you might also want to get yourself a pair of scissors, especially if you're planning on sort of getting a pattern paper that has the bigger images on it that you might want to fussy cut out. It's also, scissors are extremely important if you want to fussy cut your stamps. If you're, we're going to talk about, I have another video coming up next week that's sort of my up-level card making kit. Like, what would I expand on this with? Beyond adding colors and different versions of supplies that you already have in here, in this kit. So, like, what's my next level stuff, and in there I have like die cut machines and things like that. But just to get started, invest in a good pair of scissors. And yes, there is only use it for paper, that kind of thing. I also kind of would recommend a non-stick scissors if you're going to be cutting like gluey things, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then there's also, X-Acto knives. These are all things, you can use. These are pen blades. I have a couple different sort of like knife style cutters. I don't like knife style cutters, but I wanted to mention them because they are an option. But it basically boils down to you need something to cut your paper with. My first recommendation would be some kind of paper trimmer or paper cutter or something, and then, and a scissors. Like, if I was going to go with only those, like, that would be my recommendation. There's my paper trimmer again. So yeah, that would be my recommendation, paper trimmer. If you have X-Acto knives and you're comfortable using, or craft knives and you're comfortable using them, good for you. I hate them. Maybe that's a bit dramatic, but I do not like using them. I've tried so many times and so many different styles, and they're just not the vibe for me. I would rather use a scissors or a trimmer. So, do what works for you. That's the correct answer, and you have to figure that out on your own. Here's my card base situation. So this is why, it kind of helps. Now, I guess you don't really need one that actually measures out to 12 by 12 now that I think about it, but because you really only need to cut your card base down to like 4 1/4. A typical card base size is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. That's your average. That's your A2 size card. That's what you're most gonna use. There's other popular sizes, 5 by 7, mini slims, slimlines. And if you're not going to venture out into those other sizes, you have a little wiggle room on your trimmers. Oh, here's my rotary trimmer. I knew I had the rotary trimmer in here somewhere. But so you have a lot of different options, a lot of different styles and things to use. And again, cutting card bases and things like that, you can pre-purchase card bases. That's the other thing I wanted to say. A lot of like Joann's and Michael's stores and Hobby Lobby and all of those kinds of stores will have like pre-boxed card bases, which when I first started card making, I used the pre-cut the pre-cut and scored and everything card bases almost exclusively. I would say only within the last like 6, 7, 8 years or so have I started to really use make my own card bases. So it's if you buy the pre like done ones, you often get envelopes with them too. I think they're a fantastic way to start. The next thing that you should have, or that I think is good to have in like your starter kit, would be a scoreboard. And again, now that I've just had that conversation about card bases and things, maybe this isn't as much of a starter supply as I originally thought when I was kind of filming and putting together this video. So yeah, I'm almost tempted to take this out, but I think I'm going to leave it because I do think it's still something that I would invest in early on. I am in card making, your card making gathering supplies. So scoreboards are great. You can actually do some really fun techniques with them as well. Their main purpose, though, is to cut and score, or to cut, no, this is to score your card bases. That's like their main purpose. So I have a few different ones in my arsenal. I have this really big one that's also very, very old. I don't use the big one that often. I used to use it a lot more. I don't so much anymore. It was just when I first started, and that was pretty much the only scoreboard you could get. So I had that one. But I don't use that one. It's great if you're into like 3D projects and like bigger things like that. But that's not really my jam. So I usually use these smaller ones. This Altenew one is my newest one. It has a few more score lines on it, or grooves or measurements. I don't really know what the right word is. And this one is probably the one I'm using the most right now. But I do have the smaller Score Buddy that is also great and works just as well. This one just has more lines on it, which, did I really need that? No, honestly. But for some of the techniques and things you can do with scoring, it's helpful to have more options. This one also has a nice little like holder thing for the score tool, which is really nice. But then the Score Buddy one, which I'll pull out in a minute, is really great for traveling because it has that little case on it, which is super dirty, and I should really like clean that off. But it has a little case on it, and then it also has a little sort of craft mat you can use that fits in it. You do have to buy that separately. I think you still have to buy them separately. It's been a while since I've looked at ScorePal stuff, so because these things pretty much last forever. It has a few less lines on it, so there's a few less measurements you can use. But honestly, it all works the same. So this one has the 1/8 inch lines for the first and last inch, and then just the periodic lines you need in between. And I was working on some fancy fold cards, and my Score Buddy did not have all the lines I needed, so I ended up investing in the Altenew one just to pretty much have around for that reason. And yeah, so I'm just gonna score a couple card bases here, the ones that I had cut during the paper cutter trimmer part of the video. And what I'm using here is, you'll notice, is not the score tool that's included in the Score Buddy. This is called a Teflon bone folder. Score tools / bone folders are the same thing. This one's called a Teflon bone folder. I just find it really easy to work with. I don't know if it's a shape issue, but I don't know. I find this one really easy to work with. The Altenew one has a really like fine point on it that I kind of struggle with. And accidentally like to like rip my paper with it. This one I haven't had that issue with, and it still scores really nicely and folds really nicely every time. I don't know, this one just vibes for me. But most scoring tools will come with some kind of, most scoreboards will come with some kind of scoring tool with them, so you're gonna have one that you can use, no matter which version you buy. The other thing you can purchase, I do not like these so much. It's just too much thinking for my brain. But you could go a 2-in-1 route, and this is why I don't have one, because it's too much thinking for my brain and I don't like them, but I want you to know they exist. Is you can go a 2-in-1 route, and there are some paper trimmers that also have score blades with them. So usually you just, you kind of push the one blade out of the way to use whichever one you're using, if you want to score, or if you want to use it as a paper trimmer. But that was just always too much thinking for my brain and figuring it out. So, and I'm not always super great at reading paper trimmers, which is why I have my ones that I like, and I like them because they work for the way my brain works. And as someone who has a brain that often works in weird and mysterious ways that I don't really understand all the time, having something that just works for my brain, even if it's maybe not the easiest or most conventional option, will always be worth it to me. So, it's because you put money into this stuff, it's really hard to not be frustrated when you get something and you realize my brain doesn't work this way, and this doesn't work for my way my brain thinks. That's kind of frustrating. I've definitely had that situation before, several times, if I'm being honest. But it's, to me, in the end, finding the trial and error of finding what works best for my brain and keeps card making and crafting and stuff being enjoyable and doesn't make me frustrated. That's what matters. So, I'm kind of bad about that. But granted, I also do have a fair number of people in my life who craft and do things like this. So I have a lot of opportunity to like destash things, and if it's not working for me, to give it to someone else who it might work for. And I never know. I mean, I could give it to them and they could be like, yeah, this doesn't work for me. I'm confused. But it then it's their problem of what they want to do with it then. But yeah, it's important to me to find what makes things easy for myself, and keeps things enjoyable. So you can't be afraid of the trial and error. And even if you stick with it for a while, like maybe you buy like a paper trimmer and you hold on to it for like 6 months to a year, and all of a sudden you're like, this is really just not working, then go look for something else. So don't be afraid of trying different things to find what works for you. And this is a good example of that. Sorry, I had a timer on. This is a good example of that. And this is my tape runner stash. So everyone is very particular about their tape runners, I have learned. I have a friend who cannot stand the tape runners I use. I have other people who are totally fine with these. I like the dot adhesives personally, for several reasons. Also cannot get this package open, but because I have this one that needs a new tape thingy in it. I've discovered that I like the dot runner style a little bit better. I have a friend who can't stand the dot runner style because she doesn't like that it doesn't necessarily always lay down your adhesive super evenly. I just don't care, if I'm being honest. And there's also other people you can watch who maybe care a little bit more if their adhesive is laid down super evenly, and probably have better tips on that than I do. I just don't. It just doesn't bother me. So yeah, that's that. But if I was going to recommend one adhesive to you and you could only get one adhesive, it would be a dot runner or a tape runner. I mean, like I said, I've decided that the dot runners are more my jam than the tape runners, but and the solid tape runners, but still, same thing. I would recommend one of these to you. They do have a learning curve. I'll admit it did take me a long time to kind of master them, but again, I think that was just my brain working in a weird and mysterious way. And also me being young. I was 12 when I started card making, so there's a lot of things that I had to essentially sort of kind of grow into, that were a little challenging for me at 12, and now at 30, it's like, oh, that was easy, It's like when you learn how to read and do math, and when addition is hard, and now it's kind of something you do every day. So, just keep that in mind. You do have to learn and practice and things. This is what I like about dot runners. You can kind of brush them off very easily. I grabbed that piece of paper just to, show you how it worked. But I was able to just rub the dot runner right off, and there you go. You can also get adhesive erasers. I can't find mine. I don't know where it is right now. I was going to show it in the video, but I can't find it. So, oh well, but you can get adhesive erasers too to help you get rid of extra adhesive and stuff, because it does happen. Sometimes you get a little out of the lines. The next thing adhesive I would recommend getting is some kind of foam squares or foam tape. You're gonna see I have a lot, and then when I was going through my adhesive drawer and filming this, I found an entire stash of foam squares that I didn't even know I had, and I was like, wow, I really need to start being better about using these foam squares, because they're not one of my go-to adhesives, but they feel like they're pretty much everyone else's go-to adhesive, so I should really get with the program. But this is why I recommend nonstick scissors. If you're going to get a foam tape roll like the ones I just showed, or this clear one that I have here, I recommend getting a nonstick scissors, because it's going to be very helpful when it comes to cutting that kind of stuff. It's still gonna get sticky. You're still gonna get sticky grossness on it, which is why I have one scissors that is specifically for cutting sticky things. But it does help. So, just my advice. The next thing I have is these double-sided tapes. These are, if you're gonna use, this would be my suggestion for an alternative to a dot runner or tape runner would be a double-sided tape like this, some kind of dry adhesive. That's basically what that's called. Anything that's not wet. So, anything that's not your typical glue is considered what you'll hear people call as a dry adhesive. So I recommend, I have so much different brands. I have to admit, with adhesives, there's not a ton of brand loyalty for me. My tape runners are Gina K and Tombow, and my preferred one is the Gina K one. But beyond that, I don't really have much of a preference in terms of adhesives, like brand wise. So, like Tombow is really nice because that's really accessible. You can really find it in a lot of like Joann's and Michael's stores, which is why I like to call it my backup adhesive, because if I run out, I can really easily go and get some. But the Gina K is kind of like my preferred all-around one, but you have to order it online. Or I haven't seen it in any stores, at least, yet. I guess I won't say never, but, or it might not be like hiding somewhere, but I definitely have never seen it, so, another option is these glue dots. These ones are the Thermoweb brand, so there's dots. There's actually also a glue dots like brand, which I'll show in a minute, because I do have their like little dot runner, which I don't like. These are not my favorite types of adhesives at all, but I just, we're kind of talking about adhesives, and it's more of a general, you just need to have some kind of thing to stick stuff together. So these are an option. They also have the 3D ones, which are kind of nice because it's kind of like a different version of foam tape. But again, not my most favorite. Glue dots are not my most favorite thing to use. I do have a lot of them though. I do use them for small things like gluing down sequins and things like that if I don't want to use a liquid glue, because sometimes liquid glue is messy and annoying. So this is the glue dots runner. I don't even know why I still have that. I really should get rid of it. This is the other sort of dark horse, I guess. No, that's not the right word. I don't really know what the right word is, but I have to have it, but I don't use it very often. That's what this is my Xyron sticker maker. So this lets me put like small things through, and then I can pull, and then it puts the adhesive on the back for me, which is really nice, and it's all replaceable and things like that. I like to use that sometimes for things like die cut words and stuff like that. I use a lot of that kind of stuff when I can't use this kind of stuff, which is my liquid adhesive stash, which I have quite a few different that I have gathered over the year. Half of these companies, one of those companies isn't even in business anymore. The Tombows are, and the Gina K Connect Glue, those are my go-tos. Those are the two that sit out on my desk all the time. I have the glue tube, and then I actually just used up my big bottle into the last of that fine tip bottle. So I have to get another one, but that's my go-to liquid adhesive is Connect Glue. And then you have these other brands of liquid adhesive. This is the one place that you can't necessarily go to like Walgreens and pick up a thing of school glue. Don't get me wrong, it will work, obviously. But it's really not the best option. And if you should really invest in some kind of like a craft glue, for card making. The Elmer's glue is just not really, it's not meant for this kind of stuff. Which, in a desperate pinch, okay, but highly not advisable. Would rather you didn't do that to yourself. Okay, now moving on from glue and into sort of what I'm going to call the focal image section of this video. So now that you've got your cardstock and you've got your paper trimmer to cut your cardstock with, and you've got your adhesive to stick everything together, we have to start getting to more of the design elements of making a card. So the easiest thing I can ever recommend to you is look for Ephemra. This is a very wintry pack. It just so happens to be the only Ephemra pack I have around right now, because I don't have a ton of Ephemra packs around. And this kind of mostly comes from sort of the scrapbooking world, but they're basically pre-printed, pre-colored, pre-cut sheets of, sheets isn't really the right word, but pieces of paper, I guess, for lack of a better word. Some of them are more cardstocky and chipboardy and stuff, but that's the easiest route you can go. And then you've got all your focal images, you've got greetings, you've got everything you could possibly need. This is, the other option especially if you're a planner person, is stickers and rub-ons and things like that. So you know, this is another option if you don't want to invest in stamp sets and inks and that kind of things, if you want to keep things simple to start. And now this is just like a sticker box for me. So like I also have some of my like more embellishment stickers, like my gems and stuff, which I don't mention in either of these two videos. But you know, you can branch into like embellishments and sequins and gems and stuff like that to add sparkles and all of that kind of stuff. But I don't talk about that in either of these videos. So this is the biggest category when it comes to the focal image range of things. So this is all about stamps. So stamps are obviously a kind of big thing in card making, and the most difficult thing for me to give you sort of like a basic, here's what my basic list would look like. Stamps are kind of, in my brain, a very personal decision that feels really dramatic, but I don't really know how else to say it. In terms of figuring out what you like and what works for you and all of that kind of thing, and it can take a lot of trial and error. So similar to the cardstock where I said you could kind of like go check out like a Joann's or Michael's or Hobby Lobby or something. You can definitely do that with stamps too, and that may be the best option when you're starting. Like I said, I will have links down below to some of my favorite stamp companies and favorite places to get stamps from, but that can easily be overwhelming, I think. So here's my tips for picking out like your basic stamp sets. So an important thing to consider, like when you're picking out your stamp sets and things like that, there's a couple things to consider, but a big one is you want a good mix of like greetings and images. If you're only going to get one stamp set, try to pick something that has a little bit of both that you like maybe you're really into flowers, maybe you're really into like little animals, maybe you're really into people. Like, you have to figure out your personal style, and again, don't be afraid if it changes. I used to be really into like little people stamps, and I don't use those almost at all anymore. I very much kind of entered my floral phase, and my little critter phase, although I do have to admit I'm missing my little peoples a little bit, so we might have to see a resurgence of some of that in the next year. But figure out what you like, figure out what works for you. You know, internet shop, browse around online, and that kind of thing, and see what you like, and, you know, just invest in a couple sets to start. You don't have to like form your full collection right away. But that's my tip for that. Figure out what you like. And then go from there. So the sets I showed were just a few of like my favorites that I reach for fairly often. There's a lot of more things to consider, but getting started, that's what you need to think about. Okay, now on to the next thing, which is acrylic blocks. These you need to be able to use those clear stamps I showed in the last part. So the stamps come in a couple different forms. You can also get wood-mounted rubber stamps, in which case you don't necessarily need these blocks to do those, which might be another option if you're looking to get started on something easy. But I do really recommend the clear stamps. I think personally they're a lot easier to work with. So I would you know, invest in a block set and some clear stamps before I ever went back to wood-mounted rubber stamps. But again, personal preference. I know a lot of people who still swear by their wood-mounted rubber stamps. So again, personal preferences. I like the Comfort Blocks from DK Designs. That's my favorite brand of acrylic block, but you can definitely pick some up at Joann's and Michael's and Hobby Lobby too. So, you know, get one that will fit. You don't need, I have a lot of different sizes and a lot of different blocks that I've accumulated over the years. You don't really need every single size of block, although I will admit it does always help to have blocks that are appropriately sized to the stamp that you're using. It makes life a little bit easier. But if you just want to get one big block that will fit all of your stamps, that is also an option. But do not underestimate the ease that comes with using blocks that are appropriately sized. You can also upgrade eventually to a Misty if you want, which is a stamping platform. I thought I had mine in here, but I don't know where it went. I think it might be in the next video maybe. but that is also something, if you decide you really, really like it and you're willing to spend the money for it, I highly, highly, highly recommend getting a Misty. It will change your life. So the next thing is the ink. If you're going to use stamps, you have to have ink to use them with. Again, you can go as basic as just getting a black ink pad and you will be fine for ever, basically. You never really have to expand beyond black if you don't want to, but obviously there are all kinds of crazy color ranges and ink lines that you can extend into if you wanted to. So if it was up to me, if I was starting all over, I would start with black, and that would probably be it for a really long time, and then I would probably slowly expand into the neutrals and then start adding in the colors. Now this also kind of depends on what kind of stamps you use. I like to color. I like to get line images that I color in, and so therefore having a more neutral ink palette makes a lot of sense to me, or would make a lot of sense for me at this point. So you know, sticking more to like the browns, grays, blacks, that kind of thing would have made a lot of sense. Well, and would still, if I got rid of all my stuff and started over now, like that's what I would stick to. Would be and stuff that works with the coloring mediums that I'm using. So like I'd probably use this, which is which I'm showing now, which is an amalgam ink that works really well with different coloring mediums. It works with watercolor, colored pencils, markers. Again, something to be aware of if you are getting into alcohol markers and things like that. Make sure you have an alcohol marker compatible ink. If you're into watercolors, make sure you have a watercolor compatible ink. We can talk about that a little bit more near the end of the video. But do you really need every color of the rainbow to start? Probably not. And then kind of same thing with your cardstock. I'd start, after I had like my neutral palette, I would start expanding into my favorite color. So I'd start with like pinks and purples and things like that. Now, that being said, if you go a different direction with your stamps, if you already know like coloring is not something you're going to be into, not something you're going to want to do, there's also a bunch of different types of ink, which I'm kind of showing here. So I'm going to backtrack and talk about that really quick, and then I'll jump back to color palettes. So most of the things I've shown you up to this point are dye inks, and someone gave me a really good tip to tell the difference, which is a dye ink dyes the paper, where a pigment ink will sit on top of the paper. So this ivory here and the white is technically a pink pigment ink, so it's going to sit on the top of the paper, take a little bit longer to dry, things like that, compared to like the dye inks, which will really like soak into the paper. But part of the reason I'm showing you this, part of it was to show off pigment inks. The other part is there are two different styles of ink pads. One is a felt and one is a foam. I cannot stand foam pads. Again, just personal preference. The only ones I will tolerate them for are these pigment inks. I do not like foam pads. I find them very uncomfortable to use. But I do like the felt pads better. So again, personal preference. I had a bunch of foam pads when I first started stamping, and I got rid of all of them once I got more comfortable, or started using the felt pads a little bit more, because they were just so much easier for me to use. So again, it's all personal preference. You got to figure out what works for you. Okay, so now that I'm on to just showing a different ink line, a couple of the different ink lines that I have. Let me go back to talking about colors. So the color palettes are obviously a thing. You can get I'm showing you neons here. You can get like any color you can possibly think of. Well, maybe not every color, but most colors you could ever possibly think of. You can probably find in some company's ink line somewhere. So if you choose to go the route of your stamp sets, I would let that dictate your colors. So if you, like I said earlier, if you like line art images and you're into coloring and all of that kind of stuff and you like the way that looks, go ahead and stick to your neutrals to start, and then maybe start expanding into your colors when we talk about something in the next like up level video. But if you decide to go the layering stamp route, so there's type of stamps where you can get that basically do the coloring for you, and they just layer different levels of an image on top of each other, and they look really, really cool. I actually really enjoy them when I'm short on time and don't have time to like color something. I use them a lot in the videos to keep the video shorter, just because coloring takes so long, but layering stamps make it so easy and so quick. So I do use layering stamps in the videos a lot. So then I would, if you're going the layering stamp route, then I may step back from the neutrals. I may get a black, just because it's basic and great for sentiments and greetings, but I would probably, instead of building my neutral collection first, I would probably just get a black and then go find a color family that I really liked. Again, for me, like, I would probably gravitate more towards the pinks and purples, but like maybe you really like blue or you really like turquoise or something like that, so you decide to like build those color families up first. Maybe you do a lot of floral, so you decide I need green for leaves, so you know, kind of build a little bit of a green collection, and then a pink collection because that's the color florals you like. I don't know, I made that up. But, you know, you have to figure out what works for you and decide on what you're going to get the most use out of and what makes the most sense for you to invest in early versus later. So the next thing is mats. So this is my newest craft mat that I have. It is a self-healing mat from Alta New. It's up in the corner there. And this one is very small and it folds. It's very travel sized. I do have a bigger one, but it's gotten kind of messy and I decided to go with this travel one instead. Not sure that was the best decision, but I do really like this travel one too. So I don't know. We'll see. I also have these paper ones that I used to use when I lived in my other house with my dad and used to use my kitchen table all the time because it was easy to just pick up and get rid of when I needed to like not be in that space. So that's another option. A lot of places have them. And then this is the other option, which is a nonstick craft mat. There are so many different options. Okay, first of all, there are so many different options. I don't even show them all here. But this is a nonstick craft mat. It's a watercolor mat. It's meant to be used with watercolors. They're handy. I don't use mine very much. And the other option is a glass mat, which I also have, but I did not show it on camera because it was covered under stuff and I didn't want to move everything to get it out. But those are like your big things, and you want to get one to protect your workspace, but you can always just like put down a piece of paper or something too underneath it to protect your desk and stuff, because it can get messy sometimes. And also like self-healing mats like this one are nice if you're going to go with the craft knife route for cutting everything, because it's better to have some kind of mat underneath. So, you know, explore craft mats. There's so many different options. Okay, I have to catch up a little bit here. This one is very, very, very extremely optional, and again goes back to kind of depending on how you use your stamps. If you go more of the line image route, you're going to want something to color them with. It could be colored pencils, markers, watercolors. I have very professional markers and pencils and things because that's just, I've been doing this for a long time. Okay, I talked way too much, and I apparently did not give myself enough time. But I'll see you again next week for the up-level version, and don't leave questions in the comments below if you have them, and I'll be happy to answer them. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below, and I'll see you again soon, and have a crafty day.